Hi, I'm Megan Coon with Powerhouse Real Estate, and the real estate industry can be a fun one to talk about. Today, I want to share with you some horror stories that I've run into in my time in the industry as a real estate broker. I once had a client that listed their home out in the country in Utah. I won't give a specific location, but it was a beautiful home. It was listed in a higher price range and had quite a bit of land with it, as well as, a nice barn and water rights. And so just to give you a little bit of an idea of the type of land that it was. Now, I had some buyers come in. We had quite a bit of interest on it. It was during a pretty good seller's market. So there were a lot of buyers interested. They came through and took a look. We ended up getting a couple of offers, but one of them stood out. They loved the home. They were going to be paying cash for the home. They didn't have another home that they had to sell. So it was a great opportunity for the sellers. So we got under contract. They got through, some of their due diligence. We sent over the property disclosures and they ended up wiring the money for closing. Well, the day that we were all going to sign for closing, the buyers called me and said that they were no longer interested in the home because they determined that it was in an area that had mosquitoes outdoors. And they were actually very frustrated that our sellers didn't disclose that there were mosquitoes on the property, and they were going to actually take them to court over it. So the money had already been wired. We were ready to close, and here we are having a dispute over mosquitoes. I honestly couldn't believe it, especially considering these buyers lived in the same city already, so they were familiar with the mosquito situation in the area. Now, they did not end up forcing the matter legally. We did wire their money back to them. We put the home back on the market, and we were able to get it sold quickly with another buyer. But I will never forget that experience, that phone call that we are canceling this transaction on the day of closing because we're worried about mosquitoes on the property. You should know as a buyer, outdoor items like that are not disclosed. There could be mice outside, there can be stray cats, there can be any items outside, and those aren't disclosed. And so make sure you do your due diligence and hopefully find that information before the day of closing. Another funny story, or this one's actually kind of heartbreaking. I had a home listed again, and I had some buyers come through. They were really interested in the home. They actually didn't have their own agent, so I was working directly with these buyers. I had shown them the property a couple of times. They came through my open house. They were ready to make an offer, and it was actually an ideal offer for my clients because my clients were moving out of state and didn't want all of the furniture that was inside the home to have to move it. And these buyers were coming in and would love everything included. And so it was going to be an ideal situation for both parties. Now, as we started to talk through the logistics of an offer, they said they were going to be paying cash for the home. And I was a little bit hesitant because they wouldn't give me a lot of information on where this cash was coming from and when they would have it available. So that raised a red flag for me as the seller's agent. I wanted to make sure that, this was a legitimate deal, that it was going to be able to close, and that they did actually have the money that they said they did. So as we did a little bit of due diligence, they sent me some more information. I did a little bit of pushing. I urged them to give me more information before we can get this under contract to make sure that everybody's protected and that you can uphold your end of the deal as well. And come to find out that they had been scammed. They were planning on getting all of this money from a scam site. You've probably received these text messages, these phone calls, like you've won $1 million. And they expected to get all this money. I raised the flag to them and I said, listen, I don't think that this is legitimate. I think that you've been scammed. And they were so adamant that they had not been scammed, that that money was coming, that they had won it from the publisher's clearinghouse, and that it was coming with a new car and $2 million. And unfortunately, they just got, drug along. We didn't write up the offer. I started working with some other buyers and told them, when you have the money in your account, then we can move forward. But until then, we're going to work with some other buyers. And they called me every single day to see if the home was still available. And unfortunately, 2 weeks later, they still hadn't received their money that they thought they were getting. And these poor people had been taken advantage of. I tried so hard to help them, but it was a really unfortunate situation for both parties. I mean, my sellers were really excited about this offer. And so it just goes to show you have to be really careful in this world. And if you are a child of a mother and father looking for a home that might be subject to something like this, please check up on them. I felt so horrible that they had to go through this. They lost some money in the process, and if they would have just let their kids be a little bit more involved, I think they would have seen what it was and they could have avoided the whole situation. I once got a transaction from a probate attorney. He called me and wanted me to help list a home that he had put through probate. And the story was honestly heartbreaking. So as we were getting this home ready to list, the probate attorney was acting as the seller. So I was working directly with him. Now, the story is the husband and wife owned the property. The husband originally had owned the property, and his first wife, I don't know if they were divorced or if she passed away, but she was no longer in the picture. And he had 3 kids with this wife. He later remarried a woman from Italy. She had no children, and the kids were raised at this point. So while she took the kids in as her own, she never legally adopted them. Well, the husband passed away first, leaving everything he had to his wife. And as she lived in the home, she still had close connections with these kids, with the grandkids. They were a really tight-knit family. Well, she passed away, and unfortunately, because they had no trust, will, or anything in place, the kids were not the beneficiaries because they were not her legal children. So as the home went through the probate process, they actually found a sister to this woman who lives in Italy that she hadn't spoken to in over 20 years. But because she was the closest relative to her, she became the beneficiary of all of the estate. And so these children that lost their father, lost their stepmother, they now were left with nothing because the home was never put into a trust or a will was never written. And so that was a heartbreaking story to me. It's so hard to lose someone, and especially to know that all of that was going to someone that they never had even met, and they were under the impression that their stepmom would have wanted them to have it all, that she wouldn't have wanted it to go to her sister. So please make sure as you purchase a home, I know that we don't want to think worst case scenario, or we don't consider that it could happen to us, but make sure that you're taking all of the legal steps to get the home and this big, huge investment that you have to go to the right people if something were to happen to you. It's easy to set up a trust, put it into an estate, and choose who the automatic beneficiary will be so that if that happens, then it's all taken care of for you and you have some peace of mind, and the people that you love will be taken care of after you're gone. One more story I want to tell you today is, this isn't really a horror story, it's just an actual really funny story and has a lot of moving parts. So I had a client reach out. They lived here in Davis County, and they were moving out of the state to Massachusetts for a job opportunity. So we listed their home, and at the same time, I got them in touch with an agent in Massachusetts to start looking for homes there. So they were able to find a home there that they loved, and it was written that they would purchase that home if they could sell their home here, which is what we call a contingent offer. So they wrote that contingent offer. We got it under contract, so they were able to get that under contract while we had their home listed here. We were actively marketing the home, and we were able to get an offer on the home. It was a little bit of a slower market, and so we kind of had to take what we could get as from buyers. And we also received a contingent offer on the property. The people purchasing their home here had a home to sell in St. George. So we now have this domino effect that if they can sell their home in St. George, then we can sell the home here, and then they can purchase the home in Massachusetts. So it was quite the domino effect. Well, the St. George offer, believe it or not, received a contingent offer as well. So they had a home that they needed to sell in West Jordan, Utah. So now we have this huge domino effect. If the home in West Jordan sells, then the home in St. George can sell, then the home here in Davis County can sell, and then the home in Massachusetts can sell. It was quite the experience. The funniest part is that sometimes in contingent offers, you have the same agent working, right? If they were purchasing a home here in Utah and had the contingent offer, I would be helping them with the purchase as well. But because of the diversity of areas, we had 6 different real estate agents involved in this transaction, as well as 4 different lenders. We had 4 different title companies, and it was quite the adventure to make sure that this got closed. Conveniently, they all did close, and they closed on time. So we were able to close them in order. West Jordan closed, St. George closed, Davis County, and then Massachusetts. So everyone was happy in this situation, but it was quite a wild ride working with all of the parties involved to make sure. And if one thing would have gone wrong, the whole thing would have fallen apart. And so we all were just holding our breath, hoping that everyone did their job well and that we could get it closed. So fortunately, it all worked out for us. There's usually always something that we have to work through as a real estate agent on behalf of our clients, but they're not always that bad. So if you want to jump into the real estate market, I'd love to help you out. My name is Megan Coon with Powerhouse Real Estate.